Strong winner, weak loser. Flyswatting. If we
Okay, so this is interesting because like in the anime world, like there are like this like One Punch Man or like type of characters like Suna introduced Kaisen. There's like mm, and there's also like Gojo, like Sukuna, like so this is interesting because this talks about like how to write fights. So kind of curious how I'm actually curious how they do it because like they hype it up like with One Punch Man. Basically like they had to fucking like step back from like the whole like One Punch Man thing because like it was like basically fly swatting all the time, you know. Well, like yeah, so let's check it
strong
out.
winner, weak loser. Flyswatting. If we know the strong character is going to win, how do we keep a fight interesting? I think flyswatting is probably the most common type of fight scene. Writers love having strong characters, and what better way to show off
It is true. In the anime world, I guess this maybe yeah, but like nah.
a character's strength than by having them make light work of weaker characters? Unfortunately, I see some common issues in these types of fight scenes that make them feel unbelievable, unnatural, and sometimes just plain boring.
Yeah, and just disconnects you from like the story itself because like you're like, okay, well,
Today I'll analyze good fly swatting fights so we can hopefully learn how to do them right. I'm going to include spoiler levels out of 10 for each fight so you don't have to worry about getting spoiled. Like I just said, writers will show off a character's strength by making stark contrasts to other characters. This is pretty much power scaling. In my first video, I mentioned that power scaling is stupid, but I think I left some explanation on the table. There's nothing inherently wrong with scaling characters' hypothetical power levels against each other. In fact, it didn't get past me that the fight spectrum that I made up literally does just that. My gripe with power scaling is when it's treated as an absolute answer to a matchup. In reality, no matchup is absolute. This should hold true with all fight scenes. No matchup should be determined before it starts, even if the chances are just 1 in a million. With that being said, when a character has only a 1 in a million chance to lose, it can quickly become a predictable snooze fest. That's why I have special requirements for each type of fight. So for everyone who watched my first video, we know that my requirement for a fly swatting fight is characterization. What does that even mean, characterization? Well, my definition is honestly pretty loose. We obviously know that the strong character is going to win, but we don't want the fight to seem pointless. It just means that for the fight to have a place in the story, we need to learn something new about the strong character that we didn't know before. That's what I'm calling characterization. This can range
Yeah, this is interesting. Or it will move the story, but like usually it's important characters that are like talked about. So usually you get to discover kind of like the league, like more about the league or like the level, the personal life of like people, the characters of this level of power, which is interesting. At least like that's what I
from something
noticed.
as simple as a new move, all the way to something complex like a character's tragic backstory. As long as it's something fresh to the audience, it usually is enough to get my stamp of approval. Why do I require this? As the name suggests,
Because usually like they are like usually like seen as out of the ordinary characters even in stories where like everyone is really out of the ordinary, you know.
these fights are like swatting flies. If a fly enters a strong character's path, they need to swat it. Okay, cool. But what if another fly comes along, and then another, and another? Sometimes there are a lot of dang flies. That's just how some stories will pan out. What's make or break is how the story handles the swatting. After about 4 swats or so, I start to get bored. That's why I want to see something fresh, some characterization. If we've seen them swat 1 fly at a time, start getting 2 or 3 in one blow. If we've seen them handle 10 flies at a time, then I want to see an even stronger move. How many flies can you swat at once? How quickly can we exterminate the infestation? That gives us insight into their strength. Better yet, give me insight into their psyche. How does their strength impact their personality? How does it feel to swat flies over and over? What kind of monster is capable of this? For any given fly swatting scene, ask what makes this fight worth showing. If it's not bringing anything new to the story, maybe it's not worth the screen time. If you haven't heard, Satoru Gojo is strong. the type of strong that contextualizes the entire JJK universe, the type of strong that a lazy writer likes to say their character is, without really giving explanation as to how or why. Where I think JJK excels is showing exactly how Gojo's strength impacts him, as well as how it works, and they use fight scenes to do so. The fight kicks off and Jogo is wasting no time, which in general is great to see in a fight. I said in the first video that fights are best when they're punctual. I also said I hate when strong characters are playing with their food. Yet, Gojo seems to be doing just that. Throughout the fight, he's taunting Jogo, holding his hand, taking his sweet time, playing with his food. But I think it works perfectly in this case because it characterizes Gojo. His carefree, joking personality is a big reason fans love him, but it also makes sense for his character to be that way. A big theme in JJK is the loneliness that comes with strength, and I think a way Gojo combats this feeling of isolation is by being a fun, humorous guy, even during battle. Beyond Gojo's personality, I also said this fight helps the audience understand his powers. Here, he explicitly breaks down his technique to Jogo. There's a bit of a debate regarding showing versus telling exposition, and I definitely agree that in general, showing information makes for a better viewing experience. However, there is merit to having characters actually explain things. I think as long as it's reasonable for the character to actually explain something in a certain circumstance, rather than forcing it for the audience's sake, then I'm okay with verbal exposition. And Gojo is a talkative guy. So now we know how Gojo is effectively immortal, but the fight isn't done bringing fresh concepts to the audience. Jogo uses a domain expansion, which we haven't seen before. It's a staple in JJK combat, only reserved for the strongest of characters. Gojo, who I forgot to mention grabbed Yuji mid-fight to serve as a teaching moment, casually counters with his own domain and swiftly decapitates Jogo now that there's no fun left to be had. So, in recap, what did this fight tell the audience that we didn't know prior? Gojo is effectively immortal. You can't touch him unless he deliberately turns off his technique. He can also share this infinity with other people. He can even shoot these red bombs called reversal. Gojo is a clown. Nothing is a threat to him, so basically everything's a joke to him. Domain expansions are the pinnacle of sorcery. Only the strongest characters can use them, they enable all attacks to hit, and two domains fight like a tug of war, and the stronger one prevails. In my first video, I really wanted to include Kung Fu Panda, but I was unsure what scene worked best. I've since realized it is without a doubt the bridge scene.
Kung Fu Panda is actually like so underrated. Like you watch it if you didn't. It's actually really fucking good.
Tai Lung vs the Furious 5. Before the fight fully kicks off, we get a bit of characterization through an exchange of dialogue. Tigress is stanced up and ready to fight, but Tai Lung is casually inquiring about the Dragon Warrior. He knows that these five are not a threat to him, and he's egotistically acting like it. As we go on to learn, ego and self-acceptance make up the biggest theme of the movie. Once the fighting starts, Tigress honestly does a fair job of holding her own against him, but it's not long until he has her debilitated, and Viper needs to sub in to save Tigress's life. Viper lasts about 5 seconds until Monkey needs to come to the rescue. Now we see all 5 members of the Furious 5 working in a beautifully synchronized attack, perfectly using each other's strengths and their environment to their advantage. Mantis jolts the entire bridge by himself, then Monkey uses his speed to be the first one there to strike Tai Lung before he's set. He then assists Viper, who uses her agility to strike Tai Lung again, and then Crane uses his flight to wrap him up with the bridge and assist Tigress with the final blow. The Furious 5 just showcased a near perfect David vs. Goliath fight, but this is a fly swatting video. And unfortunately for the Furious 5, they are the flies. Tai Lung uses his momentum to launch to the land behind them, and is finally on an even fighting ground. After one last egotistical jab of dialogue, he reveals the ace up his sleeve. His nerve attack makes swift work of the Furious 5, and reminds the audience just how strong he is. So, in recap, this fight lets the audience know that Tai Lung is an egomaniac, and has a seemingly uncounterable ability that puts him as arguably the strongest character in the show. The thing about fly swatting is that it only occurs when the power dynamics of a fight are heavily tilted toward one side. In stories with a lot of magic and fantasy, fly swatting is pretty common because strong characters are pretty common. In Game of Thrones, by far the most common category of fights is actually the toss-up. The writers favor the realistic approach, which often makes for pretty close fights between a few knights, settled with superior strategy. I plan on revisiting Game of Thrones a lot in future videos. However, Game of Thrones is still a fantasy show, and there are massively powerful characters. That power takes the form of Dragons. When I covered Gojo, I mentioned that he was so powerful that he recontextualized the JJK universe. This is the level of power that dragons have in Game of Thrones. Daenerys having possession of dragons was like the most significant plot point in the earlier seasons. They were so powerful that their very existence set the story in motion. Bit by bit, we watch the dragons grow up. We see them as juveniles hunt goats, burn children, and we're kind of realizing their dark potential. But what about in battle? Are they really that powerful? After waiting for 6 seasons, we finally get to see just how strong they are. Daenerys and her 3 dragons make light work of the fleets at Slaver's Bay. This is a level of power we haven't seen in Game of Thrones yet. It brings something new to the table, further characterizing the dragons and Daenerys by contextualizing their strength. This is real fly swatting. Now I want to raise the question of how to use fly swatting to continue to characterize someone once we already know their strength. Flash forward a season and we have another fight with dragons. This time it's Daenerys versus the Lannister army, the Battle of the Gold Road. We know a dragon can wipe out an entire army because we've seen it happen before. So what's new this time? Well, for starters, they escalate the scale of their destruction, which makes for an awesome spectacle. However, beyond the strength of the dragons, we also see some characterization of Dany. Despite Tyrion advising her not to go through with this, she brings the dragons to battle and ends up paying the cost, as one of her dragons is shot down. I think this battle is one of the moments in the show we can point to as a time she starts to slip into madness. Finally, in the last time we see her and her dragon, Daenerys decimates King's Landing, laying waste to everyone in her path, soldier or civilian.
Game of Thrones is such a fucking like bubble, you know? Because like I cannot believe that like we used the world like everyone used to be so fucking like so much of a fan of Game of Thrones. As they fucked up the ending, meaning that like everyone got like a sour like got to be bitter about the TV show. But like I cannot believe how big Games of Thrones was and how forgotten it is now. Like now, like no one, well, obviously no one fucking talks about it, but like it left like no legacy to it. Like there was like a TV show they started to they tried to restart it, but like overall, it didn't fucking like match the hype and the energy of like Games of Thrones back in the day. Uh, like I cannot believe how hype it is, how hype it was, how fucking debilitating, like how fucking like stupid the ending was. Like it's a like without like spoiling, obviously, like it was like kind of like happy ending, kind of happy, sad ending, right? But at the same time, it's unbelievable how much like how hyped it was and how sad it is that like it ended up like so forgotten because like it was such a great show. And let me check, they did like uh yeah, like yeah, no, there wasn't I think it was no, and it's unbelievable that like it was so hype and forgotten. Like if you did watch Games of Thrones, still a good time, still a good time. Like you get what you want, but like it's unbelievable. Anyway,
This once again scales the dragon's capacity for destruction, as well as Daenerys' madness, and makes for a great example of how to progressively use fly swatting as a way to display character, even if the characterization was really dumb. Screw you, Season 8. The hall fight in Old Boy is definitely a classic fight scene. As iconic as it is, however, I'm not sure how much I like it. While I was trying to classify it, I was having a hard time deciding where it fell. Remember, the fight spectrum is used retroactively to analyze a fight after it happened. First we ask who wins, then we generalize how strong each party is, and then that tells us where the fight falls on the spectrum. So first, we know that Daisu, our protagonist, wins the fight. Next, let's analyze the strength of the two parties. Individually, each member of the party he's fighting is very weak. The party as a whole, however, is about equal in strength to Daisu, which would mean this fight is a toss-up. But they don't really fight as a whole unit. They do something that is a telltale sign of fly swatting fights, specifically bad ones. Before the fight begins,
yeah, we go one by one, and it was like technically like fly swatting like existed in fucking like Assassin's Creed, right? Where it's like, Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We attack you with like 15 dudes, but like one dude at a time though. Like maximum two people will attack you at the same time. So don't be too scared about it. Like this type of fly swatting, like it was the same with like Power Rangers and stuff like that. Like in some of like classical some of like classical action shows, you know?
Daisu asks his opponents if anyone has AB blood type because his previous opponent is bleeding out. Some pretty good characterization right there. We see that he's a good guy, not really looking to kill any of them. Once the fight begins, he easily takes out each individual person that fights him. Classic fly swatting, the one thug at a time strategy that we see so often in, I'm just gonna say it, bad fights. These fights annoy me because it ruins the illusion and you feel like you're watching actors, not real characters. About 30 seconds into the fight, however, the group actually works as a team and surrounds.
Yeah, you can actually like check it out. Like what's interesting is like I don't know, like don't watch the main character, watch the characters that like are attacking him. No, watch the characters that are like on idle, like that are like not attacking the main character. And you will notice that like there is some serious bad acting or like just like kind of like absent acting each time you fucking watch.
Right there, we see that he's a good guy, not really looking to kill any of them. Once the fight begins, he easily
So
takes out each
check out these
individual
guys,
person
like
that fights him. Classic fly swatting, the one thug at a time strategy that we
like
see so
this dude,
often in,
just
I'm just
he
gonna
doesn't
say
know
it,
what the fuck
bad
he's
fights.
supposed to do.
These fights annoy me because
Here's
it ruins the
well,
illusion and you feel like you're watching actors, not real characters. About
the
30 seconds into the fight, however, the group actually works as a team and surrounds him, which is about the way we'd expect this fight to go. I can definitely appreciate this realistic turn of events. Then, with him down on the ground, they stop because they think they killed him. However, the fight is not over. My problem with this fight is not that they didn't finish him off here. It's important to recognize that maybe they have some sympathy for him because he spared their friend at the beginning, or maybe they're just a bunch of underpaid novice thugs who have never really killed anyone. I don't have any problem buying the idea that they wouldn't finish him off right there. Regardless, with a knife in his back, he
okay, now like check out again like the characters that don't attack him, that are like waiting to attack.
jolts back up and proceeds to take them out one by one. I guess my main gripe with this fight is that it's more of a display of incompetent opponents than it is Daisu's abilities.
Like
That's not to say he doesn't put on an impressive choreography of moves. If you like this fight, I can totally respect that. Ultimately, this fight's not really that bad, and it makes for a good example of both Daisu's toughness and, strangely enough, his kindness. I'm curious if you can think of any other examples of fly swatting where they do that stupid one thug at a time strategy, and if you think it ruins the fight or if they handle it well. I've got another example of that right here. Before we get to the next fight, I just want to take a moment to pause and thank you all for watching this video. This channel is about 2 months old now, and I've just had so much fun making these videos and seeing all the support that you guys have to share. If you want to continue to support, a simple like and subscribe is all I'm asking for. Anyways, let's keep going. Let's head to the planet Titan for one of Marvel's better fight scenes. Thanos vs. the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. I pick on Marvel a lot on this channel, and I'm gonna do that some more here, but I'll also acknowledge what this fight does right. I feel like this fight plays out in a very similar fashion to the fight from Oldboy. Firstly, it could appear like a toss-up when you look at the two parties holistically. Then, for whatever stupid reason, the Avengers basically start the fight with that one at a time strategy. This is because the writers are lazy, and they want to pan the fight out and give each hero their own special moment. And I think it makes for bad fly swatting. Once the
Yeah, but at the same time, like it is a superhero movie trying to fucking like promote itself to fucking like, well, now the audience changed, but like think about like the fucking like teenagers or like kids that watch the movie and do not like care about like, oh well, fight scene is, you know, because like compared to like Old Boy, I think like this is a movie for adults. Like usually like teenagers will not fucking, or kids will not be excited to fucking watch a movie. But like for the Avengers, like it's fine to do this type of like fly swatting, right? Because it allows for like the kids to fucking like dream and see their favorite hero, because like everyone like in this franchise will have like their favorite character character, and they get to have their moment. And I think that like it's not bad writing. It's just that like it's a writing that takes into account the fact that people are fans of the characters. But technically it makes the fight worse for like people that actually like fucking understand. But like yeah, like hero movies and stuff like that, it's made for like technically kids, so and teenagers. So yeah, it's not bad. I think it's important because there's a lot of like in superhero movies like symbolism, the symbolism of what being a hero is, and everyone has his favorite, and it's important that like they get to shine, you know, like especially for like scenes that important.
Avengers finally start working together and implementing some strategy, the fight starts working out in their favor. What makes Thanos so strong is that gauntlet. So what they should have done right off the bat is try to remove it from him. It's actually super satisfying to watch them all work together to remove it, using each other's strengths to their advantage. Then, of course, Star-Lord ruins it. I think we all know that was just stupid, and I'm not going to waste my breath complaining about it. At least it characterizes Quill, I guess. Anyway, once Thanos is back awake, the real Flyswatting takes place. He handles all 6 of them swiftly, using his gauntlet to his advantage. So here's a real problem I have with this fight. Check out this random purple wave he uses. Why on earth did he not use his power from the get-go? This is another problem with a lot of bad Flyswatting fights. I hate when characters wait to use their best abilities. It's just not realistic. Doesn't he want to win? I get that I'm being very critical, but I'm a firm believer that realism greatly enhances storytelling, and conversely, unrealistic moments ruin stories. Sure,
It is true, but I think that like superhero movies and like some fantastic movies, but superhero movies and like basically some movies or TV shows, they are like in this like kind of like zone where like symbolism and like choreography is also like really important, and it doesn't matter if it's not as realistic, because like what matters is that like you get to see your favorite characters actually do stuff, right? And but that's only for like in the world of animes, it doesn't work as much because like because there are like there's less room for fantasy. I think that like in superhero movies you have like way more like room for fantasy, and especially when you try to promote like this because like this is stuff made for like technically kids and teenagers. So
if
yeah.
Thanos immediately wiped out all 6 of them with some magic gauntlet move, it would not be entertaining. However, I think they could have done a better job recognizing that his natural, realistic reaction would be to finish them off as fast as possible. With this being said, I think the writers could have better emphasized a surprise attack where all the heroes work together to get the gauntlet off from the get go, rather than wasting time with those 1v1 moments. Speaking of 1v1 moments, let's just move on to the final bit of this fight. Finally, with everyone else taken care of, we see Iron Man vs. Thanos. This is probably my favorite part of the entire fight, some true power discrepancy put on full display. At the start, I think Thanos actually tries to use that purple wave of immobility, but Iron Man actually blocks it with his suit shield. Iron Man puts on a beautiful combo of moves that use full advantage of his suit, yet all it draws is a single drop of blood. Even when he dedicates his entire suit's power to this yellow laser beam, it's not enough to halter Thanos. That is power. But at this point, we know Thanos is strong. So what does this last fight do that's new? When Thanos delivers the finishing blow, he commends Tony. This shows that he's a nuanced, almost respectable villain that is not doing things out of pure evil. He even spares him when Strange offers the Time Stone, even though Thanos could have easily won if he just took the stone and then finished them off. But he's all about trade-offs, so I guess it would make sense that he would respect the deal. Overall, this fight had a ton of problems, but it also had some pretty good moments, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. At the end of the day, it's not really Marvel's priority to be realistic, but I can't help but imagine how cool the
Yeah,
franchise would
exactly.
be if the writers simply challenged themselves more.
Like that's the thing. Like it's true, but at the same time, like yeah.
I want to conclude this video with the fly swatting to end all fly swatting. It had to be One Punch Man. If you haven't watched this show, I still think it's worth staying tuned for this section because I'm going to talk about some core concepts of fly swatting. As far as I'm concerned, the entire point of One Punch Man is to mock anime fans and the power scaling community. It's meant to get the last laugh in those conversations of constantly one-upping each other's favorite character. No matter how strong his opponent is, One Punch Man, aka Saitama, will always win. That's his whole shtick. Of course, this means that the writer runs into the challenge of keeping things interesting because the fights virtually have no stakes. And while I'm not the biggest fan of this show, it undoubtedly has a lot of fans. So why do they keep coming back if every fight is decided before it starts? If you've been watching this video, you know that it's the characterization. Saitama is a funny character. One Punch Man is a funny show. It's a satire. Let's break down his fight with Boros, a villain that could probably annihilate all of Earth if it weren't for One Punch Man. Having a character as strong as Boros would almost always mean the fight would be a World Cup, but with the presence of Saitama, it's a fly-swatting fight that's not even close. In a visually pleasing fight, Boros flashes all of his abilities, his strength, and spectacular moves, but all it does is dirty up Saitama a little, who in a very
And in this fight, actually, like, he uses best moves right away, if I remember correctly.
anti-anime fashion shuts up Boros mid-monologue. I particularly like this scene where we see Saitama get flown into the ground just for us to find out he's actually on the moon. What other show do we get a character using consecutive normal punches? It's such a comically mundane name, and yet the move absolutely destroys Boros. Finally, Boros is about to use his last gambit move, which you don't really get to see because Saitama also decides to use his last gambit, which is felt across the world. Boros puts it best. This wasn't even a fight. One Punch Man was holding back the entire time, which reveals that maybe he's just bored with all his strength. I haven't read the manga, and to be truthful, I haven't watched the show in quite some time, but I believe that besides the comedic side, this is the characterization that One Punch Man wants to explore. Similar to Gojo and JJK, they use fly swatting to talk about how it's lonely at the top. So that's fly swatting. I think
Yeah, it's interesting. It creates like this like idea of it's lonely. Yeah, it's so how lonely it is to be the best, you know?